This is Qtv News. I am Maria Musani and thanks for joining us. First, the main local, international and sports news headlines. The United Nations General Assembly has designated 13th October as the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction to promote a global culture of disaster risk reduction. Coinciding with UN's International Day for Disaster Reduction, a heavy downpour last night struck different parts of the country, with streets and houses left flooded, causing significant damage to the livelihoods of many. The outgoing European Union ambassador to the Gambia, Attila Lajas, on Monday bade farewell to President Barrow as he ends his diplomatic assignment in the country. Continuing with ex-President Jammeh's so-called HIV and AIDS treatment program, two witnesses on Tuesday appear at the TRRC to shed light on the issue. In international news, a man in the United States has caught COVID twice, with the second infection more severe than the first. Universities in Germany are to restrict their student exchange programs for African students due to COVID-19 pandemic. And in sports, light heavyweight Gambian Swedish boxer Tijan Kebe alias the Black Cobra has won his latest fight against Dino Hadjavik in Germany. Now the local news in detail. The United Nations General Assembly has designated 13 October as the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction to promote a global culture of disaster risk reduction. As Gina Bosanko reports, the 2020 target for the International Disaster Risk Reduction Day is Target E.
The International Disaster Risk Reduction Day is an opportunity to acknowledge the progress being made toward reducing disaster risk reduction and losses in lives and livelihoods in line with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030. In 2016, the UN Secretary-General launched the Sendai Framework 7 campaign to promote each of the 7 targets over 7 years. The 2020 target is Target E, sustainably increase the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies by 2020, which lays the foundation for the implementation of the Sendai Framework and is closely linked with priority for action 2, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk. The Vice President, Dr. Aissatou Touré, in a statement on Monday's commemoration says it is important to mention that the government is strengthening the DRR agenda and has prioritized the allocation of more resources to the country's resiliency programs, such as increasing budgetary allocations to the DRR. This move intends to increase the participation of local authorities in awareness raising in disaster management and environmental sustainability.
COVID-19 tells us that it is time to act decisively on biological hazards by applying the risk management approach. This indeed will be highly reflected in the plan revised under the disaster risk reduction strategy and policy to reduce the impact of pandemics such as COVID-19 that we are all experiencing the gap as our DRR strategies does not adequately reflect on such hazards. In filling these gaps, disaster risk reduction is an essential part of the recovery from COVID-19.
According to the UNDRR, at least 19 countries in Africa have validated DRR strategies or policies aligned to the Sendai Framework, and 14 countries are in progress of developing or validating their strategies. Currently, the Gambia's disaster risk reduction strategy is not in line with the Sendai Framework.
In the case of the Gambia, the policies, the strategies we have were aligned to the Hyogo Framework. When the Sendai Framework came to being, what we realized as a country is that most of our legal framework are not aligned to Sendai Framework. This is why the National Disaster Management Agency take it upon itself and sought for support from the African Union. As at now, the African Union has approved support for the National Disaster Management Agency so that we can revise our legal framework that will be aligned to the Sendai Framework.
Good governance also means effective partnership with other stakeholders to enhance disaster risk reduction. A strong partnership between the Department of Physical Planning and the National Disaster Management Agency is key because the number of settlements in flood-prone areas and high risk of other disaster is high.
Our working relationship with all government stakeholders, our operations is actually state-owned. The relationship is cordial, but the problem is, the challenge that we have is how to implement the policies or the procedures that are actually in place. The issue of why some of the infrastructure are actually been affected by disasters, in which the physical planning is supposed to be working with us to address that prior before the establishment of some of those structures. The policies are there, but they are not, the regulatory measures are also available, but the enforcement aspect of it, is not what is really coming.
According to UNDRR, good disaster risk reduction governance depends on an adequate understanding of disaster risk and its increasingly systematic nature. Also, good governance has clear direct impacts in reducing disaster losses and damages. Multi-sectoral cooperation is a key element for effective disaster risk governance and real socio-economic development. Reporting for Qtv News, I am Jenna Basonko.
A heavy downpour last night struck different parts of the country, with streets and houses left flooding, causing significant damage to the livelihoods of many. Among them are some people in the Greater Banjul area whose houses collapsed in the wake of the heavy rain. Ironically, this happened on the UN's International Day for Disaster Reduction. QTV's Mamadou Lamin Choi reports.
This is what heavy rainfall last night has left many with. Their streets and houses flooded and damaged, most significant of which is the collapse of houses in this part of the country. The consequence of the rain is a disaster for these residents of Sukuta, whose mud houses could not stand the several hours-long heavy rainfall that ensued in the early hours of Wednesday. Mariama Sanyang is a housewife who lived in this house with her children before it collapsed. Her family is now without anywhere to live after this disaster.
We have a great sadness today, but we thank God because He rescued us from a more serious situation. All our materials have got destroyed, and our houses collapsed. Because of this incident, I decided to send my children to my other family in Bruce Bay. We are seriously disturbed after the rain. I am calling on people to support us.
Another mud house in this neighborhood has also been razed to the ground during the heavy downpour. It used to accommodate at least 18 people, and now it is completely destroyed, thankfully without any fatality. It was a narrow escape for this homeowner and his family, who were instinctively guided to vacate the house around 5 a.m., a few minutes before it collapsed. Valuables in this house are now destroyed, some of which are under rubble, and there are owners with almost nothing to depend on for their livelihoods. The only thing I have now is the clothes I am in. Our materials, including clothes, food, freezer, television, and furniture, are destroyed. Nothing is spared from this disaster in the house. Even one of my children just asked me, what clothes would he wear after taking a shower? We want people to help support us now.
4 compounds have also been affected, and all the buildings have been collapsed totally. Yes, so we are appealing to the authorities, and we thank the QTV, the staffs and yourself. We are very much happy that you come at the right time.
The aftermath of this destructive rain has various effects on the lives of people. For this one, his only available source of water is penetrated with dirt and particles that have turned the color of the water dark and completely unhygienic.
The
most serious problem the rain has brought us is the fact that our only source of water is affected. Also our store, where we had kept our materials, some of which are destroyed. The extremely poor or non-existent drainage system will always show its terrible consequences against the lives of taxpayers. And without any solution to this problem, they must always expect the worst. Causes of disaster can be natural, but the measures we can take to cushion its effect will save the lives of many. The time to act is now. Mamadou Lamin Choi, QTV News.
The outgoing European Union ambassador to the Gambia, Attila Lajas, on Monday bade farewell to President Barrow as he ends his diplomatic assignment in the country. As Aliou Cisse reports, he pledges the EU's continued support to the Gambia's outgoing democratic transition.
Speaking to the media shortly after meeting President Barrow at the State House in Banjul, the outgoing EU diplomat Attila Lajas describes the relationship between the EU and the Gambia as strong under the current government, while pledging that the EU, as a reliable partner, will continue supporting the Gambia's transition processes.
I really feel honored to have been the first European Union ambassador ever resident in Banjul. I arrived end of January 2016, so it's almost now 5 years that I have served. And I had the privilege to witness and assist the democratic transition of this country. If I think back of my arrival, the country I saw then and the country I see now, no doubt that the Gambia, the transition, the democratic changes went a long way. The Gambia has decided on a change, on a democratic change, and that's what the European Union wanted to support from the beginning. I think there is no more difficult thing than a transition, a democratic transition of any country in the world. Our understanding is that the Gambia stays on the democratic transformation, and that is why the Gambia can always rely on the European Union for the support in the future to have a completion of this transition. Well, I don't think the EU-Gambia bilateral relations ever been so intensive on every level. And, you know, when you have a presidential level meeting twice a year in any country of posting, that already describes how intensive these ties are. But what I consider the most important is that this intensification of bilateral relations were not only the characteristic of the very beginning of the changes, but it went through year by year, and that I think that shows very well how reinforced the EU-Gambia relations have been ever since the presidential election in 2016.
During the closed-door meeting, President Barrow expressed appreciation of the support the European Union has provided to the country and its national development plan. The EU is amongst the partners who committed to support the country after the change of government in 2016. It led the donor conference in Brussels in 2018 and provided the government with budget support, infrastructure development, the security sector reforms, and most notably, the Youth Enterprise Project, YEP, which benefits many young people. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cissé.
Continuing with ex-President Jammeh's so-called HIV and AIDS treatment program, 2 witnesses on Tuesday appear at the TRRC to shed light on the issue. Babakar C reports.
First to appear was Awandau, a lab technician who was responsible for collecting blood samples of patients suspected of contracting HIV. Awa told the commission that she was tasked to collect blood samples and fly with them to Egypt to confirm the status of the samples. Awa said she did this over 5 times and each time traveling with more than 50 samples and each sample costing $65. The results, she added, would come out 2 weeks later and be read to patients by Dr. Mbow in front of the cameras. Awandau further explains what happens to patients with regards to the testing.
Because the treatment was a hoax, it was not working.
But anyway, if you test it again, they will still positive. So maybe the viral load can be undetectable also, but for the antigen antibody test, if you do it again, still now it will be positive.
The witness said when she returns from Egypt, the number of cases would not be more than 15 from a possible 50 to 60 patients. Awandau concluded her testimony with this statement.
The little medical knowledge I have, I know that HIV cannot be cured.
Next to appear before the commission was ex-President Jammeh's aide-de-camp, Lamin Gano. Gano told the commission that he served as ADC for 18 months after his return from pursuing a master's degree in the United Kingdom. The witness recalled in 2007 when ex-President Jammeh announced that he could cure HIV, asthma, infertility and hypertension, and explained to the commission how Jammeh would administer the treatment.
People will come to the treatment center. Sometimes, some people, when they get close to him, they will like faint or collapse. And then he will say that it's a gene, and then he knows how to deal with the genes. Then he will recite some verses and he will hold his Quran in his hand. And then also rub some water or whatever it is. To these patients until they recover and they come back to normalcy.
Gano said his mother and cousin even joined the president to partake in his so-called hypertension treatment program, which he confirmed to be a hoax.
Both of them are still alive and they are still hypertensive. In fact, my cousin had a stroke not long ago because of this hypertensive.
On the HIV treatment program, the witness also confirmed that the treatment failed and it was a lie. In his concluding statement, he said he had not witnessed any human rights violations. The commission chair asked him whether he did not consider people, including his own family, being forced to drink bogus concoction as human rights violations. He corrected his statement to say he had not seen any torture. Babukar Si, QTV News.
We will go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, the news continues with some more local news stories. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. The Deputy Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces has said that the Army High Command is committed to supporting the successful implementation of the security sector reform process. He made these remarks during a review of the Gambia Armed Forces Act review organized by DCAF. Ansumana Isonyasi reports.
Addressing participants, the Deputy CDS, Brigadier General Mohamed Ocham, highlighted the importance of the security sector reform process to strengthening democracy in the country. He says GAF welcomes DCAF's commitment to review the GAF Act in partnership with the German government, legal and security experts, adding that this is crucial to the realization of the objectives of the entire SSR process as enshrined in the National Development Plan.
We are committed to the process, and we are here to publicly state that that commitment is across the structure of the armed forces, from the officers down to the ranks. For we know that we can only do our work better if we are given the legal frames and the necessary guidelines that will clearly define what the Gambian people expect from an armed forces that is accountable and subordinate to civil authority.
Janet Ramatulai Salanjai, national consultant overseeing the GAF Act review process, says reviewing the Act is vital for the stability of the country and urge members of GAF to take ownership of the process.
We have a lot of expectation from you. Whilst we guide you, we want you to take the lead so that at the end of the day it will be easy to implement. Because as those of you who are at the process of the development of legislation, know that when you take part in the process of the development and the formulation of the law, it makes implementation easier for you, because you take ownership of the process.
The DCAF Interim Country Coordinator, Pansao Nyasi, says DCAF is committed to supporting the development and implementation of a new legislation governing the Gambia Armed Forces, and revealed plans to also engage the State Intelligence Service in order to carry out a similar process.
If you look at our work with immigration, we will look for ex-immigration officers. If you look at our work with intelligence, we engage ex-intelligence officers. And currently we are working with GAF. We are also engaging ex-military personnel. So these people have experience and they have some legal background that we think they'll bring onto the table.
The Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance, DCAF, has in the past organized similar stakeholder meetings and workshops with the aim of performing an in-depth review of the existing Gambia Armed Forces Act, also to facilitate discussions and decisions on mandates of the Gambia Armed Forces, support the drafting of a revised Armed Forces Act, and support the operationalization of the new Act. Ansumane Nyasi for Qtv News.
Sama Cairo Federation and Partner Child Fund on Tuesday donated over $4 million worth of school materials and sanitary items to needy children in the Combos. This story by Lolly M. Camara is narrated by Mudalamin Choi.
The donated items included 50,000 exercise books, 275 bicycles, 2,250 school bags, 2,200 assorted sanitary materials for children ranging between 1 to 5 years. The materials are to be handed to the Regional Educational Directorate of Region 2. On behalf of the Governor of West Coast Region, Babakary Sane, applauded the Federation for their foresight in giving such valuable materials, especially during this time of the pandemic, when children are preparing to go back to schools.
These are very good recipe when you come in terms of promoting education, especially at the young age, because these are some of the things which most of the vulnerable communities from the families find it very difficult or they struggle hard to have access. So having a partner, a local partner intervening to make sure easy access for our children, I think is a gesture and it is timely, especially it coincides with this coronavirus.
Sunkaru Jata, Sama Cairo Federation manager, outlined the important role the Federation played in helping communities, adding that the presentation this year is a special one, taking into account the COVID-19 pandemic.
We believe that the provision of learning materials and the bicycles will undoubtedly enhance children's performance in school. Equally, the provision of sanitary materials will help in maintaining good hygiene for the children, especially the 0 to 5 children, both at school and at home. The current situation of COVID-19 requires concerted efforts if we do not want to see a resurgence or a second wave.
Sunkaru Jata added that the Federation has supported 1,480 families with direct cash support, totaling to more than $2 million. This, he said, was possible due to the good partnership with Child Fund the Gambia. Musukuta Kwamaba, Child Fund the Gambia country director, states the importance of children going back to school and commends Sama Cairo Federation for the great initiative.
School serves as a safe haven for children, especially for the girl child. Parents, we are trying to do what we can do at our best. The provision of sanitary materials is giving you an extra challenge to make sure that the kids wash their hands when they are leaving the house to school, and also when they are back from school entering the house, they wash their hands properly.
Jennifer Sauer, a parent whose child benefited from the gesture, had this to say.
We thank Sama Cairo Federation for the help they are giving to parents. Each time they call, we as parents come because we know the challenges we are faced with when it comes to children's schooling. We will continue to pray for the Federation and all others helping humankind.
As an implementing arm of Child Fund the Gambia, Sama Cairo Federation seeks to promote the well-being of children and their families in the country by supporting needy families through children. Mohamed Lamin Choi, Qtv News.
We will take another short commercial break. We continue with international and sports news when we return.
With QCell's eFund service, you never have to worry about running out of credit, whether you're completely out of cash or far from a credit vendor. QCell's eFund is your way out. Loan any amount between $10 and $100 now and pay later. Dial star 393 hash to get started. As part of our efforts to always be your trusted network, we encourage you to use star 393 hash for all your eFund requests and say goodbye to the old star 118 hash. Do note that star 118 hash will no longer be functional after November 15, 2020. So remember, it's star 393 hash whenever you want to access the eFund service. Call 111 for more information. QCell, Sunyabus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is Qtv News. In international news, a man in the United States has caught COVID twice, with the second infection more severe than the first. The 25-year-old needed hospital treatment after his lungs could not function properly. This story by Babu Korsise is narrated by Mamadou Gajaga.
A study published in the Lancet Infectious Disease Journal indicates that exposure to the virus may not guarantee future immunity. COVID-19 patients may experience more severe symptoms the second time they are infected, according to a research released. The patient was infected with two distinct variations of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, within a 48-day period. The paper mentioned 4 other cases of reinfection confirmed globally, with 1 patient each in Belgium, the Netherlands, Hong Kong, and Ecuador. Health experts say the prospect of reinfection could influence the hunt for a vaccine and could have a profound impact on how the world battles through the pandemic. More research is now needed to understand how long immunity may last for people exposed to SARS-CoV-2 and why some of these second infections are more severe than the first. Contracting and recovering other diseases can cause a lifelong immunity, but it is not clear how long COVID-19 antibodies last. The researchers pointed out that reinfection of any kind remains rare, with only a handful of confirmed cases out of tens of millions of COVID-19 infections globally. Since many cases are asymptomatic and therefore unlikely to have tested positive initially, it may be impossible to know if a given COVID-19 case is the first or the second infection. Looking at what has happened, people who have recovered should continue to follow guidelines around social distancing, face mask, and hand washing as scientists continue to grapple with the thorny issue of coronavirus and immunity. Mamadou Gajaga, Qtv News.
Universities in Germany are to restrict their student exchange programs for African students due to COVID-19 pandemic.
The exchange programs, which enroll thousands of students yearly, is processing about 500 applicants this year from Ghana, Ethiopia, Namibia, and Botswana, which is beyond their expectation. Many students see the exchange program as an integral part of their studies. Due to the pandemic, the universities are offering virtual lectures for students and the demand is still great. In an interview with DW, Julia Vols of Justus Liebig University's International Office, which is responsible for student exchanges, said the travel restrictions have had a huge impact on the ability to conduct exchanges. However, because virtual exchange programs are not an option for all students, many have asked to defer their time abroad. Courtney Honicke, the head of the international department at the University of Hamburg, also speaking to DW, said the university is accepting applications from Africa, but not all German consulates have resumed processing visas. Thus, they are advising applicants from high-risk areas of COVID-19 not to come. The student exchange program is an excellent way to gain fluency in German while enjoying some time abroad. German is one of the most widely spoken languages in Europe and is a practical skill in many fields. The restriction will affect thousands of African students if the coronavirus and the restrictions it brings continues across the globe. Mohamed Lamin Choi, Qtv News.
And now onto some sports news. Lightweight heavyweight Gambian-Swedish boxer Tijan Kebe, alias the Black Cobra, has won his latest fight against Dino Hadrovic on Saturday. In Germany, this is his first fight since the coronavirus pandemic began. Muna Gajika reports.
It only took 25 seconds to decide the fight. Tijan Kebe, known as the Black Cobra, got the better of his opponent, Dino Hadrovic. Even though he was confident of victory, little did Tijan know it would be this quick. This is how he reacted to the victory.
Hello Gambia, hello Gambia. Here is your boy Tijan Kebe. We are back in Sweden right now, in our gym Angre Boxing Club. So we just want to say thank you guys all for your support you did for us. And then for that, the fight, when we went to Germany and we fight very well, and then we did the fight the way we promised we're gonna do it, which is KO. And thanks to you guys all for your prayers and everything you did for us. Like we made the support, So for that, we're gonna say thanks. And the fight was very fast, and we did it the way we planned to do it. It ended up happening in that way. So for that, I wanna say thank you guys all.
Tijan had been an amateur boxer for years before becoming a professional in 2018 with the guidance of his coach and trainer Ayman Bijelo. This latest victory will improve his ranking and performance in the Swedish and European boxing. The Black Cobra has previously won his last 3 fights in Germany against Branislav Dosenkovic, Alexandra Kovac and Slobodan Vukic. Mamadou Gajaga, Qtv News.
Before we end this bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. The United Nations General Assembly has designated 13th October as the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction to promote a global culture of disaster risk reduction. Coinciding with UN's International Day for Disaster Reduction, a heavy downpour last night struck different parts of the country, with streets and houses left flooding, causing significant damage to the livelihoods of many. The outgoing European Union ambassador to the Gambia, Attila Lajas, on Monday bade farewell to President Barrow as he ends his diplomatic assignment in the country. Continuing with ex-President Jammeh's so-called HIV and AIDS treatment program, 2 witnesses on Tuesday appear at the TRRC to shed light on the issue. In international news, a man in the United States has caught COVID twice, with the second infection more severe than the first. Universities in Germany are to restrict their student exchange programs for African students due to COVID-19 pandemic. And in sports, light heavyweight Gambian Swedish boxer Tijan Kebe, alias the Black Cobra, has won his latest fight against Dino Hajdovic in Germany. That's all we have for you in this edition of the QTV News. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.